welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show, the Storehouse Media Group Podcast, and Jesus and Ugly Jody. How are you, Jody? Our host, Jody Corbet. Jody, it's you. I want you wanted to first talk about Easter, and especially it's not Easter's not over; it just has begun. As we're celebrating it for a lot longer than just that one day on Sunday. But talk about more about that, and then we're going to get into some more about how you work with your clients.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Appreciate your time today. Yeah, obviously, we just celebrated Easter on Sunday, and I always find that to me is that's the Super Bowl for me as a follower of Jesus Christ. Christmas is great. Obviously, the birth of Jesus is really cool, and something needs to be celebrated. But for me, my hope and my salvation is anybody who calls Jesus Lord comes because of Easter. Him being raised from the dead and after taking my sins upon himself. And I think it's just a spirit for us here, especially, you're kind of in the Mid-Atlantic as well, where it's a rebirth, right? The grass is green again, the trees are coming into to bloom, the flowers are budding. Um, and just being reminded of that rebirth to life that we get here in the Easter season, and just the hope that we have, and the hope really just comes from Jesus and Jesus alone. So I think a lot of times, especially in our society today, people put their hope in things like their finances or their relationships. Our political parties are going to save us, or our military is going to save us. And all of those things are great and well intended, but none of those things are really where our hope should be. Our hope rests in God and God alone, and the gift that He gave us in Jesus. So, yeah, thanks for letting me highlight that.
No, no doubt. All right. So this we've had a little bit of a conversation on this, but I really want to dive deeper into once you identify a client that might want to work with you and you have set up that first meeting, what are you looking for, first of all? And like of your business types of your business consulting, how are you different? So I wanted to first go into really laying into just that first meeting and what do you identify?
Yeah, the big thing is finding out from them what do they think they want. And I say what do they think they want because oftentimes folks, the clients I work with, they have an idea of where they want to go. But once I sit down, the first thing I love to do is I tell them, hey, just pitch me like I was your potential government client. I worked in the government for many years. I know kind of what folks are looking for in different agencies because I've gotten to work with a lot of different agencies over the course of my law enforcement career. And you pitch me like you're trying to sell me your solution. And then what I like to do then is look at what they've got and then kind of ask them some questions on, have you thought about these different areas that your technology could support as far as the mission goes? Because I think you and I've talked before. People come in, they're like, "Hey, we want you to introduce us to the FBI," and I said, "Well, which FBI do you want?" I had a client; they had a great cyber solution, but once I heard their pitch and we sat down and talked about it, I said, well, "We can actually take this to the FBI's counterintelligence division and their counterterrorism division, along with the criminal investigative division, because there's crimes against children matters that they work." All of those divisions could benefit from your technology, not just the cyber division and the cyber investigations that they're being worked. So really what I try and do is hear what they've got. Where are they? Depending on what type of client they are. So I have my clients that bring me on as a strategic advisor. And those clients, I'll actually sit down and kind of help them tweak the product, help them create a better solution, um, explaining to them how an operator would actually be able to use what they're doing, whether it be an agent or an analyst or case officer, depending on what agency it is we're trying to take the solution to. And then really kind of explaining to them the application of that. Because obviously, if you're using it for law enforcement purposes, there's going to be things like chain of custody or evidentiary procedure that you're going to want to have built into the solution. If it's just for intelligence purposes, for let's say for an intelligence community partner or Department of War, well, that's much different because they may not need the same rigid type security, for instance, on edge devices. Now, obviously, anything connecting to a network, those would have to be, FedRAMP and now CMMC, all of those things that are going to come into play for the security if they're going to be touching a government network. But a lot of these operational things, they happen at the edge. And so I'm able to kind of help them take these solutions and explain how an operator would use them in the field.
Oh, so you're able to see that. So this is where you hear about the solution and that's what you're first looking at. What are their distribution channels? Where are they best fit? Sometimes a product doesn't have the right avatar to send it to look at, and especially with your expertise with the government and working in specific organizations and be able to connect those people to those organizations, you see what that technology is and if it's the right fit for what the government's looking for or any of your contacts are looking for.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, I've got, one of the clients I've got, they have a solution. It's a very incredible kind of an analytical tool that can connect to multiple data sets, and it's being used extensively throughout the financial institutions. And obviously, the banking and financial community that's using it, which is the vast majority, by the way, are using it because it's helping them make their decision-making cycles faster, and they're making money off of that. So that type of technology in government use would be phenomenal because it can help them make faster decisions on things like, targeting packages on potential terrorists who are trying to do bad things to us, criminal organizations and the structure of those organizations, foreign intelligence officers that are operating here in the United States. So all of those things can help us. So once I kind of figure out what the solution is that they're offering and where we can take it, then again, this is for my strategic advising clients. Then I sit down and I kind of walk them through what their objectives are. What is it you're trying to obtain here? Some folks are just trying to build up a revenue base that's going to make them marketable to sell. Some want to build up a company that they want to kind of build and run and lead and turn it over to their family and create a legacy, kind of inheritance with that company, that solution. Some were just, hey, they're great patriots and they've got something to know they can help and they want to help the country and they're not really as worried about the money, especially I find if folks who have already kind of built and bought and sold a company, they've got money. They don't need necessarily more money. They just want to help and they want to be a contributor. So really that's kind of where I next try and help them with is that. And then I walk them through some of the tools of the strategist. So, we talk about how is your communication within your company? How is your decision making cycle? I walk them through things like the OODA loop. I walk them through strategic inflection points, things that have happened in their company or things that could happen in their company that will change the dynamic of how they work. Strategic inflection points can be everything from AI, for instance. How are we using AI and how that could change your business? I know you're very familiar with that. We talk about things like we look at Clausewitz's Trinity and where are you in the Trinity? How could you move? Let's say you're somewhere between chance and probability and logic and reason, but you need to reduce the chance and probability, or you need to get a little bit more passion and primordial violence going in your company. You want to get folks fired up about stuff. How can you do that? And the ability to use strategic inflection points in order to create those shifts. We talk about center of gravity. What is your company's center of gravity? What are your competitors' center of gravity? What is it that's driving them? A lot of times I'll talk to companies and as I explain to them, hey, they may think somebody's a competitor, but when you actually dig into it a little bit more and you look at what the competitor's doing and why they're doing what they're doing, you could find that there actually would be a really good strategic partner for you. So that's one of the things I bring to my clients is a lot of strategic partnership opportunities where I've got one client that's building very, very high speed servers and another client that's building an AI platform. And I've introduced them together, and that seems to be a really good build as they're starting to build that relationship. But what can I do to help bring in? And then obviously just the revenue streams. So one of the things I like to do is look at the solution, look at the technology, figure out, hey, is this something we could take to other, let's say, defense contractors or system integrators and let them become resellers, or maybe it's a managed service that they provide to their existing clients. So things like that. Those are the things that I try and bring to my clients that I think not every consultant does.
Right. So you're looking at so many strategies. That's the difference. And when you look at yourself as a consultant, as a business consultant, you're looking at the bottom line. Are they taking it to market the correct way? Secondly, are they understanding? Then how can and what are their goals? Because you're really looking at their goals. Because they might, if they want to grow fast, they might not be the right fit for you, right? Because your strategic thing doesn't sometimes happen overnight. It's a process. Things you don't sign up with a consultant and then 10 days later your business triples in size. That's not how it works. Then after you go to that process, then you look at who do I know I can strategically align them to so they can even get business faster, right? Is that pretty much what you look at?
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I mean, obviously there may be people out there that can grow a business tremendously in 10 days, but um, I'd love to see the strategic value in that when you come, come back to me 2 years from now and see how that plan works out for you. Because oftentimes those things aren't sustainable and it's like a quick flash in the pan. Whereas if you generate a good solid strategy, yes, it may take a little bit more time, but the beauty is that that business should be exponentially larger in 10 years from now because you've gotten the objectives right and you know where you're headed as a company, and you're building towards that. And because you build in those processes that I help work with folks on, that then creates a longevity that really brings value to the company.
Yeah. And that value of the company. Okay. So those are things, but what about in the day to day then? Once you put these things into place, what are you looking at? What other things do you do as as a business consultant?
Yeah, I mean, it can be everything. We talk about things, like I said before, communication within the organization. Um, Obviously, when you're leading people, you have people. People can be messy. How are our leaders doing at using empathy to figure out kind of what's the heart of the issue with this person? Oftentimes, we'll find that there's people who they have solutions within your company, but maybe they're a little bit different or awkward or challenging personality wise to connect with or to talk with. But a leader with empathy can sit with that individual and listen to them, actually hear what it is they have to share and what they're thinking and feeling, figure out what their motive is and whatever it is they're proposing as a change, and then determine, is this the right thing for us? Maybe socialize it with some folks. Hey, this was brought to my attention. Is this something that we'd want to look at or we'd want to talk more about? Um, I think one of the things people get kind of calloused towards people over time. Oh, that person's always a squeaky wheel or they're always causing problems. Well, why are they causing problems? Maybe you do need to let them go. Maybe they shouldn't be part of the team, or maybe they're really trying to contribute and use their gifts, skills, and talents to make it better, and no one's listening, and they're frustrated, and so having that empathy that's needed, making sure your employees know what they're good at, that deep self-awareness that we talked about earlier was that Sun Tzu talks about. Um, Making sure your folks know kind of where they fit in the puzzle, that body of Christ mentality. Every organization, it's a body. It's a group of people coming together with different skill sets and functions. You need somebody to be the knee or the elbow or the shoulder, right? But you also need somebody to be the bicep and the calf muscles that are going to pick you up and lift you and move you around. But you also need a heart and you need a mind. Like you need eyes, you need all the things that come with the body, and different people fill those different roles. So making sure you've got the right people in the right spots for their gifts, skills, and talents. And then lastly, kind of being that reminder to them. It's one of the good things about being a consultant is I'm part of the team, but I'm not part of the team. And by not being part of the team, I have the ability to usually speak to a CEO and whisper in their ear of, hey, keep your eye on the prize, keep your eye on what it was you set out to do from the beginning. Because sometimes clients will get distracted with new revenue streams, which I love talking about new revenue streams, but if it's not in accordance and in alignment with what your objectives are, it's not going to help you. What's going to start doing is splintering your attention into different ways, and it's not going to keep you as focused as you need to be on achieving your original goals.
Well, so we were having a conversation, Jody, before that, and I've learned from that lesson. I have so much on my plate growing my agency and still doing a show and having a nationally syndicated show. I'm staying the course. I have some businesses I'm launching, but ultimately, at the end of the day, my primary focus is on Media Giant Productions. And I know that, but I've learned from that. So having someone like you in my corner years ago would have been so important because we can look at other revenue streams and forget what our major focus is and what our time is and how much time. How many of these CEOs do you see that they're not budgeting their time correctly for certain tasks?
Yeah, there's There's a lot of those, but I think one of the things that goes back to is it's something that you and I have very much in common, which is we don't have to be good at everything. We just have to know people who are good at other things. And so that when someone needs something, we don't necessarily have to be able to explain to them exactly what they need to do. We need to say, hey, you need to call so and so, and then do that introduction. Because, maybe so and so is an expert in tax law or helping folks with tax situations. Maybe they're helping, like you help me with marketing kind of things. But when you look at a business, there's legal components they have to be aware of, HR components they have to be aware of, financial things that are going on within the business that they need to be aware of and kept apprised of. Um, you know, uh, there's all types of different areas of a business that a CEO needs to be at least aware of. But the thing I always remind them is you don't have to be an expert at everything. You have to know it and then have people you trust running those things who are competent, who know what they're doing, who have a gift skill set that can be utilized in that position, but that you know them and trust them and that they can take it and kind of run with it.
We could have so many more conversations. We could go even deeper into this. And I think this is great stuff for the podcast. We're going to be having guests on as well. But I think really looking at what you do, Jody, is completely different because you're looking at revenue streams, money, versus a lot of times getting stuck up in, okay, what's your marketing plan? You could bring your marketing people in, but no, you have to really look at the infrastructure of the business and if it's the right fit product to market, because honestly, you can do a lot of sales that you don't have to do marketing. And you can believe a marketing guy is telling you this, but it's absolutely true
Yeah.
because you just a couple strategic relationships, that company triples in size. Or you might have something where the costs, you need to really look at who are the right hires, and that changes the game. So you really look at a 360 view of that business. And that's why I want to dive a little deeper in some of these things, but we are close to running out of time. My last question for you, very short answer. Is it smart to niche or have multiple markets to take it to? Because a lot of people say stick to one area and only niche to that area and that's it. What can be that failure if you try to do a blue ocean strategy when sometimes the blue ocean strategy will fail?
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess it really depends on what your overall objectives are and what solution you have. There's some solutions that I get, they're not good for all of the FBI or all of the CIA or all of the NSA. They're good for specific components within there. But then there's other opportunities where, like I mentioned earlier, I've got the one client, they're very, very well plugged into the banking and financial institutions. They want to get into government space. And I've got clients in government space who could take that technology back to their clients. But then those folks that are in government space also would like to take some of their technologies back to the banking and financial institutions. So try and create a win-win-win environment, when you can see overlap and that they can support one another and help them get to new clients that they wouldn't have access to on their own. And I found that to be something that I've been able to bring to several of my clients.
All right. You can check Jody out by connecting with him on LinkedIn. Your website, Jody, for people?
Yep, it's sls.consulting, sls.consulting.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you again for stopping by. That was the special Trimulcast of the Neil Haley Show, the Storehouse Media Group podcast, and Jesus and Ugly Jody, guys. Take care.